Margaret had worked in the Patterson household for nearly 20 years. She'd watched the seasons change through those tall windows, polished the same mahogany staircase thousands of times, and learned every creak in the old mansion's floors. At 58, her hands weren't as quick as they once were, but they were steady, kind, careful. She wore her orange uniform with the white collar every day. Simple, practical, the kind of thing you could wash and wear without fuss. Her hair was always neat, pulled back in a bun, small gold earrings catching the light when she turned her head. Mr. Patterson was a different man now than when she'd first started. Back then, he'd been driven, always on his phone, always rushing. Success had made him wealthy, but somewhere along the way, it had made him lonely, too. His wife had passed 5 years ago. Now it was just him and his son, little Christopher. Christopher, sweet Christopher with his bright eyes and quick smile. He was only 2 years old, but he'd already wrapped himself around Margaret's heart. She'd helped raise him from the day. He came home from the hospital, warming bottles at midnight, singing soft lullabies, watching him take his first wobbly steps across the kitchen floor. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Margaret arrived at 6:30, let herself in through the side door, started the coffee. Mr. Patterson came down at 7, his tie already loosened, looking like he hadn't slept. "Morning, Margaret," he said quietly. "Good morning, Mr. Patterson. Coffee's ready." He nodded but didn't move toward the pot. Just stood there, one hand gripping the back of a chair. "Is everything all right, sir?" He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something in his eyes that made her heart skip, fear, raw and undisguised. "It's Christopher," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He woke up with a fever last night. I took him to the emergency room at 3 in the morning. They ran tests. Margaret, they found something. A mass. They said," his voice broke. "They said he needs surgery immediately, today, within hours." Margaret's hand went to her mouth. "Oh, dear God." "The specialist, the only one who can do this particular surgery. He's flying in from Boston. But there's a problem." Mr. Patterson ran his hand through his hair, making it stand up in ways that would have seemed funny any other day. "Christopher needs a blood transfusion during the surgery. His blood type is rare. Very rare. AB negative. The hospital's supply is depleted. There was an accident last night. Multiple victims. They used everything they had. Can't they get more?" "They're trying. They've called every blood bank within 200 miles. But it takes time. Time we don't have. The doctor said if they don't operate within the next few hours." He couldn't finish the sentence. Margaret felt the floor shift beneath her feet, but she steadied herself against the counter. 20 years of keeping this household running had taught her to stay calm in a crisis. "What about you, sir? Can you donate?" He shook his head, misery written across his face. "I'm a positive. I already checked. I called everyone I know, everyone in my contact list. No one matches." Margaret's mind was already moving, turning over possibilities. "The staff? Have you checked with everyone? The gardener, the cook, the driver, no one." Upstairs, Margaret could hear Christopher starting to fuss. That particular cry that meant he was waking up uncomfortable, probably scared from all the strange prodding at the hospital. "Let me go to him," Margaret said. She climbed the stairs, those familiar stairs. She'd climbed thousands of times, but this time each step felt heavier. The nursery was painted a soft blue with white clouds on the ceiling. Christopher was standing in his crib, his yellow pajama shirt damp with sweat, his cheeks flushed with fever. "Maggie," he said, using his special name for her, reaching out his little arms. She lifted him gently, feeling how warm he was, how fragile. "There now, sweetheart. Maggie's here." She carried him to the changing table, got him into fresh clothes, a little yellow shirt because it was his favorite color. He was quieter than usual, resting his head against her shoulder, his small hand clutching her collar. "Hurts," he whispered. "I know, baby. I know it does." Mr. Patterson appeared in the doorway, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "The ambulance is coming back in an hour. They want to prep him for surgery even while they keep searching for blood. Just in case they find some in time." Margaret nodded, swaying gently with Christopher in her arms, the way she'd done 100 times before when he couldn't sleep. "Mr. Patterson," she said slowly, an idea forming. "What blood type did you say he needs?" "AB negative. Why?" I've never been entirely sure what mine is. It's been so many years since I donated blood, but I remember the nurse saying something about it being unusual, that they always needed it. Could we check? Could we test me? Something flickered in Mr. Patterson's eyes. Hope, fragile as a candle flame in the wind. I'll call the doctor right now. They can send someone with a testing kit. The next 20 minutes felt like hours. Margaret sat in the rocking chair with Christopher, singing to him softly. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. The old song her own mother had sung to her 50 years ago. When the medical team arrived, they worked quickly. A simple finger prick, a few drops of blood on a test strip. The nurse studied it again, then looked up with wide eyes. AB negative, she breathed. It's a match. Mr. Patterson made a sound, half laugh, half sob, and sat down hard on the floor. The nurse turned to Margaret. Ma'am, do you understand what this means? You'd be donating blood for an immediate transfusion. It's safe, but we need to do a full health screening first. Make sure you're able. I'm able, Margaret said firmly. Whatever you need to do it quickly. They worked fast. Blood pressure, temperature, medical history. Margaret answered every question, signed every form. Christopher stayed quiet in her lap, his little fingers playing with her earring. You're remarkably healthy for your age, the doctor said with approval. This should work. At the hospital, they moved through a blur of white corridors and bright lights. Margaret and Christopher were in adjacent rooms. She could see him through the window. Mr. Patterson holding his small hand, trying to smile, trying to be brave. The needle went into Margaret's arm. She watched her blood flow through the tube. Dark red, ordinary. Except right now, it was the most extraordinary thing in the world. It was life. Christopher's life. You're doing beautifully, the nurse said. Just relax, breathe steady. Margaret had never thought much about her blood type before. It was just one of those details you don't think about until it matters. But her mother had been AB negative too. She remembered now. And her mother had been a kind woman, always helping neighbors, always finding ways to give. Maybe kindness was in the blood. Maybe it passed down through generations, waiting for moments like this. The transfusion took 40 minutes. When they finally wheeled Christopher into surgery, he had enough blood, enough life, enough chance. Margaret sat in the recovery area, drinking orange juice through a straw, a bandage on her arm. Mr. Patterson came and sat beside her. His eyes were red, but his shoulders seemed lighter. Margaret, I can't find the words. You don't need words, sir. All these years you've been part of our family. But I never really understood until today how much that means. You didn't hesitate. Not for a second. Margaret patted his hand. That boy is my heart walking around outside my body. Has been since the day he was born. You don't think twice about saving your own heart. They sat in silence for a while. The kind of comfortable silence that comes from years of shared mornings and quiet understanding. 3 hours later, the surgeon emerged, still in his scrubs pulling down his mask. The surgery was successful. We got it all. With proper follow-up care, he should make a complete recovery. Mr. Patterson wept. Margaret wept. And in the recovery room, little Christopher slept peacefully. His color already better, his breathing steady and strong. When he woke up the next morning, the first thing he said was, Maggie? She was right there, of course. Right by his bedside, holding his small hand in hers. I'm here, sweetheart. Maggie's right here. He smiled that smile that lit up the whole world and went back to sleep. Later, much later, when the crisis had passed and life began to return to normal, Margaret went back to her routines. The coffee at 6:30, the polishing and cleaning, the little tasks that made a house a home. But Mr. Patterson was different now. He came home earlier, spent more time with Christopher. And every morning when Margaret arrived, he said, good morning, like he meant it, like he saw her. Really saw her? Sometimes the most impossible miracles are the simplest ones. They're not about magic or wishes or fate. They're about one person showing up, rolling up their sleeve and saying, whatever you need, I'm here. That's what Margaret had done. And in doing so, she'd saved more than a life. She'd reminded them all what family really means. Not blood relation, but blood given freely. Love offered without asking anything in return. And in the evenings, when she rocked Christopher to sleep, she'd sing her song. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. And the little boy would smile, wrapped in the kind of love that needs no words. The kind of love that simply is,